Are we about to see the end of UNRWA? If recent reports are to be believed, then the organization that has been basically has more employees than the UN's general organization for refugees. This is the organization for refugees in the Palestinian territories, is about to run out of money. At least that's what they've been telling us. They have enough money until September, which gives them enough time to do a lot of damage. But will that be the end? Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm joined by Michael Kauffman. Michael, how's it going? And do you think we're about to see the end of UNRWA in a couple of months?
Yeah, it's going well. I wish that I could believe that it was the end. It clearly ought to be the end. This is an organization that daily is discredited, and is clearly aiding and abetting Hamas and also participating in terrorist activities. So it's a remarkable doublespeak on the whole notion of United Nations and peaceful nations and so on. I don't buy it at all. I think this is more of the same gibberish and fear mongering in order to drum up more support. I do hope that the U.S. will hold to its March 2025 deadline, and if Trump is elected, I suspect that there will be no more U.S. funding for UNRWA once he's elected, because it's not even clear why anyone should fund this organization after what has been uncovered in Gaza.
And yet, some are. So the UK, I don't know if it's been made official, but David Lammy, the new British Foreign Secretary, has made it clear that he thinks it should happen, and he has the power to do so. By the way, when the scandals broke out with UNRWA back in January, a bunch of countries cut funding for UNRWA. Some countries increased their funding to UNRWA. So it appears that UNRWA is one of those is really an untouchable organization in some senses. No matter what they do, and we know a lot of what they do already. We know what they do when their people aren't actually killing. In their schools, for example, they teach kids that that's what they should strive for in the future. We complain about our schools in the West not being good enough, and I think we should complain about that. But it's next level there. Kids are actually being taught that murdering Jews is their highest the highest achievement possible to them in life, and if they die on the way, that's just an added bonus. Um, I don't know if you saw the news that today Israel bombed another school.
School.
Israel, yeah, that was school again. Like we were talking about the ambulance that was bombed early on, and people said, "Why are you bombing an ambulance?" Well, an ambulance is a vehicle, and it can carry wounded people who are in need of urgent medical care, and it can carry terrorists and weapons. Uh, the same with a school. It's a building. It could be a place used for education. It could be a place used for terrorism, as it was in this case. But of course. Israel bombs a school is such a great headline for the people who want whatever that headline achieves. What are your thoughts on that most recent attack?
Well, it's more of the same. I mean, the starvation of the Gazans has gone away miraculously. That never really materialized, but it was great headlines. Initially, we were not letting any Gazans in. Then we were targeting citizens. Of course, that's been debunked, and we have probably the best ratio of citizens to soldiers being killed, to the extent that any of the citizens really, as we've said on other shows before, any of the citizens are really innocent. When citizens are actually holding kidnap victims, they're no longer citizens, they're kidnappers, and they are terrorists. This is just more of the same crap. Not only have the schools been found to have these weapons, et cetera, and where terrorists go, but we know that the hospitals also are reasonable places for terrorists to sit. All of this, by the way, is of course violations of international law completely. The notion that an international body is actually complicit, clearly complicit in this, it would be unthinkable under any normal circumstance. But of course, none of the rules really apply to UNRWA.
Well, the idea that it's a violation of international law, I think, assumes something that is not the case, which is that international law is a thing. But that, by the way, that is the topic of the reality show, specifically with relation to Israel. So we will talk about that some more. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Let me just read a tweet from UNRWA from a few hours ago. 5 UNRWA schools have been hit in the last 10 days. UN facilities must be protected at all times. They must never be used for military or fighting purposes. No one is safe in Gaza, wherever they are. The people of Gaza are children, women, and men who have the right to live. I mean, this may, that having just read that, I'm thinking maybe this is a tweet that we should have broken down and read like half sentence by half sentence because there's so much dishonesty in there. First of all, leaving aside my opinion that the United Nations should not exist at all, the fact that the argument that UN facilities must never be used for military or fighting purposes sounds like a good idea. Do you want to tell us what's missing there in that tweet and with that part of it?
Well, it's a good idea, but it's just that it's a pipe dream. Hamas has co-opted everything. I mean, they start with using citizens as their shield. So once you do that, it's like asking a terrorist to negotiate in good faith. I mean, the whole thing is absurd. The UNRWA has helped facilitate the construction of probably over $1 billion worth of tunnels throughout Gaza, where the tunnel entrances in many cases were actually leading to UNRWA facilities. And there's no question given, especially given the number of UNRWA employees, that they were aware of all this construction. This did not happen in a vacuum. So this whole notion that you're starting with reasonable people that are just a little bit different than those of us, say, from the West, which includes most Israelis, is just crazy. And this is the kind of stupid liberal thinking, and I mean that liberal thinking in terms of everybody's kind of just the same, but some are a little bit better than others, but it's mainly they're victims of their circumstance. This is absurd, and this needs to stop. And I think this is where all of this comes from.
So whenever I look, thank you, Wes Stewart, for the super chat as well. Whenever I look at this, at what UNRWA says, I think their role in the Palestinian propaganda machine is something they understand very clearly. So again, in this tweet, especially with this, UN facilities must never be used for military or fighting purposes. Why is that idea, which is right? Why does it not then add Hamas is using our facilities for military purposes, and this is why they were hit? Not only does it not say that, it very clearly, while not naming Israel in the tweet, very clearly implies that Israel is the reason why innocent buildings, UNRWA buildings, are targeted, and Israel is the reason why women and children are not safe, and and their life has been turned upside down by Israel. Of course, it was already bad enough because Gaza is an open air prison, as we hear from these people all the time.
Yeah, I think that's mainly what we have to keep saying, because the world. Look, all of the leaders and all the people that actually back funding of UNRWA are fully aware that somewhere between, I'm making up numbers now, but some substantial amount of money, call it 80%, 90% of it goes to funding terror-related activities. They're all aware of that. And some of the rest of the money goes to buying textbooks that teach people that your main goal in life is to meet Allah early by blowing yourself up and killing Jews and other infidels. It's so simple. And what's remarkable to me is that the leadership around the world would like us to all believe that it's actually very complicated. It's actually not very complicated. And the fact that Israel was allowed to have normalization, or was able to have and has normalized relationships with places like the United Arab Emirates and was close to having one with Saudi Arabia just before this all started, and probably was the reason that this started, or at least a large contributor to why October 7th was launched when it was, is it just, that's what people need to stop believing, is that the so-called experts out there who have studied this problem for a long time, they know something that the rest of us with common sense don't. And the fact is that common sense says that people who want to build a better life for themselves and their citizenry, as opposed to just for themselves, will find a way to have peace with another country. The reason Israel is a good country, and the reason most Western European countries, essentially all that I can think of, and the United States are good countries, is because we don't want to take anyone over. We do not want to go in there and grab land and annihilate people. We do a lot of things that we believe are in our best interest in terms of national defense. We do spying, we do CIA, it's fine. It's part of unfortunately, it's part of the reality of the world. But what we don't do is try to annihilate people, and we don't have a constitution that says we're going to annihilate people. What Hamas has, and what all of Gaza believes in, is the Hamas Charter, which is to annihilate Israel. And what UNRWA has done is to perpetuate that and to actually fund it.
Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says UNRWA is Hamas. I agree. That is also the title of one of our first viral videos, viral by our standards. I think it's about 50,000 views back in late December, early January. We were among the first to talk about what was coming out about UNRWA teachers that were either involved or at the very least celebrating on October 7th, which is bad enough when you think about who you want educating your kids. So another tweet from UNRWA, and I have a context for which I want to read this. This is from 2 hours ago, by the way. Both these tweets are from today. Nearly 70% of UNRWA schools in Gaza have been hit since the war began. Over 95% of these schools were used as shelters when hit. 539 people sheltering in UNRWA facilities have been killed. Now, of course, we're leaving aside the numbers because we know these numbers are not real. And it doesn't actually matter whether or not they're real. It's interesting to talk about people who are sheltered, and you mentioned spies and the West having spies. A couple of days ago, presumably with the help of spies, Mohammed Deif, really, one of the worst terrorists, the worst one eliminated by Israel in the past 30 years or so, was eliminated in the heart of a humanitarian zone. This is where him and Rafa Salameh, who was the commander of the Khan Yunis brigades, and a bunch of other terrorists. So, if you kind of sometimes want people on the other side to be at least semi-honest, so that we can have a conversation with some of what they're saying, which this would be a part of. They would say, look, you know what, Israel shouldn't kill terrorists if they're, in civilian shelters, but they are. But you don't even hear that. You don't even hear an admission that terrorists, or wherever there's a humanitarian zone, wherever there's a school that is UNRWA run and is used as a shelter, wherever there's a hospital, there are terrorists. That is what Gaza is, and that is what Gaza is with UNRWA, with UNRWA's decades-long presence, and and having this massive budget. They have 13,000 employees. So I don't know what money they're running out of by September, but if they have to reduce personnel to 12,000, they're not going out of business.
Yeah, it's. Let's remember that after October 7th, I can't remember which leader, I don't know that it was Sinwar, but someone like that mentioned that they were going to continue the October 7th type of massacres until Israel is gone. And that's what they said. And they also said that the more dead Palestinians, the better, because that's part of their entire publicity campaign, which the Western media has eaten up, which is remarkable, inventing all sorts of new, quote, rules of war that apply only to the people that have been attacked. UNRWA is complicit in all of this. I mean, they were part of this whole funding mechanism, along with the money that went directly from Qatar and so on and so forth. It is just amazing how naive people can be. And I assume they're naive because the news continues to perpetuate a lot of this silliness and this absurdity and frank hypocrisy over and over, and people keep listening to it, and they seem to enjoy it.
Yeah, that statement by a Hamas spokesperson, "We will do October 7th again and again until Israel is annihilated," uh, is, Hamas, like I said, there's different aspects and different parts of the propaganda machine, the Palestinian propaganda machine. I I think that was in Arabic, if I remember correctly, and then translated into English. And of course, in English, you hear different things, and you hear the stuff that UNRWA says while being fully in bed with Hamas. Should we read another tweet? This is by Philip Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, the person who also issued that warning that they're running out of money. And this is also from today. This is literally, I'm seeing it because it's retweeted by UNRWA. I'm going to read it. This time last year, children in Gaza were enjoying games, sports, and arts at the UNRWA Summer Games. This year, they are sifting through the rubble and grieving their loved ones with the weight of their trauma. The war robbed the children of Gaza of their childhood. Hashtag ceasefire now to bring back some light for a difference. And then there's two pictures, one of children enjoying themselves and then the rubble in the same facility. Again, it's Christopher Smith in the chat puts it beautifully. Why? That's a question that doesn't seem to. Why are the children in Gaza not celebrating the summer games exactly like they were last year? And is ceasefire now, which is the demand at the end, is that the way to prevent such horrors from happening again? Because again, for children to go through the rubble is a horrible thing. There's no doubt about that. But if they are in such a situation and it's a man-made situation, then the question is, who are the men who made it? And maybe we should blame them.
Yeah, I think the adjunct is always ceasefire now. Okay, here's the method. Here's the protocol. Real simple. Don't have to be a Middle East expert and study for many years. Hostages are returned and Hamas surrenders. That leads to ceasefire. End of story, full stop. The victors do not have to agree to a ceasefire when they're victorious. It's really turning the whole thing on its head, and it's one bit of hypocrisy after another. But this is called blame the victim. Let's also remember that there were a lot of Israeli kids that were enjoying good times in Israel, and they actually were enjoying good times in Israel, not building tunnels, who were killed and watched their children be killed, watched their parents be killed on October 7th and subsequently. So it's sort of like when you're out on a playground and you're 12 years old or 8 years old, and the question for the teacher is, who started it? Well, that's super important right now. The people who started it is Hamas, supported by UNRWA, clearly, supported by the Palestinian people who all cheered for it, almost to a T. Almost 100% of the Palestinians cheered for it. And the fact that we're 10 months into the war and there's still, the last check I think was probably several weeks ago, I think 70 to 80% of Palestinians support Hamas. It's fine, they can support Hamas. That you are absolutely right, they're allowed to have their opinion. But Israel will absolutely annihilate Hamas and continue to annihilate Hamas. And anybody who supports them will suffer the consequences. It does get back to the old adage that you are the victims of your philosophy. You can believe anything you want, you can have any opinion you want, but reality always wins. And the reality of the situation right now is that Israel will continue to destroy Hamas. Deaf is probably dead. Nobody wants to talk. I mean, we can't verify it yet on Israel's side. It's really hard to do. The fact is we got the other guy, the head of the Khan Yunis brigade, as you said, Razi. We will continue, and if Deaf is not dead yet, he will be. And just like it took us 10 years with Osama bin Laden, Death will be dead. Sinwar will be dead. These guys are done. And Hamas should be done. And even if America wants to tie one of Israel's hands behind its back, Hamas will be done one way or the other.
I hope you're right. I'm not as optimistic about Israel doing what needs to be done as you are, but I hope you're right and I'm wrong. But yeah, you were talking about releasing the hostages, and I don't know what you're talking about because I'm searching through UNRWA's Twitter and I see no mention of any hostages. That is not a part of that conversation at all. And this is again, this when you see in the media discussions of it, the mainstream media in the West. I'm not talking about electronic intifada. You see experts being brought on. These people are experts. The UNRWA, the heads of UNRWA, uh, what's her name? Francesca Albanese, the UN. I don't remember her exact title, but something to do with, she's an expert. She was brought on and days after October 7th said Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. That was the issue all along. And when we talk about the UN, it's always important to remind people you are paying for it. All of you, everybody watching, we are paying for this. We are paying for whoever is running that Twitter account. We're
Yeah.
paying for whoever is running those schools and allowing and inviting Hamas to use them as military bases and then tweeting, look, they hit a school. And we're paying for that, and we need to take that into consideration when we look at our leaders.
Well, one of the things that George Orwell wrote so well in 1984 was about doublespeak. And one of the things that governments have learned to do very well, especially with social media idiots who love to perpetuate doublespeak, is to say things that are opposite to what they really are, because as we say, their belief is if you repeat a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. The name United Nations is especially built to make you believe that this is a group of nations that are united. This is absurd. We have a Security Council, which is the top group that is consists of the three arch enemies on the planet, which is the West with the United States and UK and I believe Germany, but I don't remember exact, or France. France, sorry, yeah, couldn't have been Germany. And you've got Russia and China. So this is absurd. These are not united people at all. These are people that have a very different view of the future of humanity and the future of government and individual rights and so on. This is absurd, but it follows from there. Of course, UNRWA has Relief Workers Association. Of course it does, because relief is good, and we want to relieve people. The fact that this is one of the most bloated, bureaucratic, never mind corrupt, organizations since its inception, and is a disgrace. This money could be put to far better use almost anywhere else on the planet than what is being done right now. And like you said, all of us are paying taxes, all of us in the West that are supporting this doublespeak. Every day we hear this about all these great people. It's just part of the way we get controlled easily, because we all think that there's experts out there who have some hidden insight. First thing you do is ask yourself, if they were so damn smart, how come the problem still exists?
It doesn't just still exist. It's gotten worse, and it's gotten worse as UNRWA grows. And tell me correlation is not causation, but in this case, the correlation is they have been teaching kids to strive for nothing but the murder of Jews, and more Jews are being murdered by graduates of their school and teachers of their schools. So there's questions to be asked there. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, you are right. The UN is not woke, but it is bad. Yeah, that is we had that conversation a few days ago. Yeah, there's all wokeness is bad, but not all bad things are woke. And so do we have a positive note to end on, Michael? Because one thing I would like to see, and there was some story about it in some article in an Israeli newspaper a few weeks ago or a month ago, and I haven't heard about it since, that Israel is considering declaring UNRWA a terrorist organization, which I absolutely think is the right thing to do. But yeah, do you see any hope at the end of the tunnel when it comes to dealing with UNRWA and
Look,
their content?
I'm not a huge fan of Donald Trump as a person. We all understand that he's not really the person you want to hold up as a flag of American beauty and being proud. But he is a man, I think, that understands the difference between fundamental good and fundamental evil. And I think that certainly compared to the left, who thinks they can have their cake and eat it too, don't forget that the left in America is the same group that's thinking that criminals who just steal some things, that they should be left to go because they really need them. So theft, therefore, is suddenly not a crime anymore. I mean, it goes all the way up to people that have a good intention, even if they murder a few Jews, that's okay. I think if the United States completely defunds UNRWA and refuses to, and if it puts further pressure on the United Nations in general by cutting down funding, much as Trump did when he threatened Angela sorry, I'm blanking on her
Merkel.
name, Merkel, thank you, from Germany, and said, you either pay your NATO dues or we're pulling out. And she hated Trump, so she bought her oil from Russia. But eventually Germany kicked up its NATO. And if we largely pull out of the United Nations, and if we stop funding UNRWA altogether, other countries will follow. We are the leaders in the free world. The United Kingdom has to step up as well. France has to step up. Germany. I mean, if these four countries step up and do the right thing and stop looking at, that 5 or 10% of their voting base is going to be upset with them because and you just keep saying the message, we're not going to support organizations that clearly support terror. We're not going to support the United Nations in general because it's various groups are headed by people that are absolutely from some of the worst countries in the world. The Human Rights Organization, for example, it's nuts. But until we have leadership, and that's my hope, until we have leadership that can discern good from evil and doesn't mind saying good doesn't mean perfect, and evil doesn't mean there aren't a few good people stuck in there somewhere or well-intentioned people, that we're not going to be in trouble. If we do have people that are leading and do believe in separating good and evil, simply, and it is simple, then we will have some hope.
Thank you, Tron, for the super chat. The Trump point, I don't necessarily agree with you, although I do agree that he would be better for Israel. I think he would be worse and I actually agree that with the NATO point. But I think on some things he's bad enough. But actually that makes me think that maybe someday in the near future we will have a Trump versus Biden debate here, maybe with you and somebody who is willing to say they'll vote Biden. I don't know how that's going to work, but I'm sure it'll be better than the debate that we saw between the two actual candidates. And yeah, we're going to bring somebody better than Biden to argue for Biden if that happens.
Well, we can find a lot of Jews in America that still want to vote for Biden. It's remarkable.
That's true. Yeah. Particularly people supporting Israel, I find it difficult to see how they can vote for Biden. But that is a topic for another day, many more days between now and the election. I'm sure we'll talk about it. Where can people find more from you, Michael?
LinkedIn, Kauffman with 2 Fs.
Thanks, Michael. You are back on the reality show, I believe, later this week. And I will be on the reality show in a couple of minutes. We will be talking about we will be debunking the illegal occupation lie. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, Michael. Again, thanks everybody for watching,
Thanks.
and we'll see you in a
Pleasure.
couple of minutes.